I met Justice Gogoi and I mentioned a few questions as people preparing for a conversation usually do. And I left out a few tricky, inconvenient questions. And the first thing Justice Gogoi said, I hope you'll be also asking me about X, Y, and Z. So that's how prepped and ready he is for this conversation. And I want to start, Justice Gogoi, by asking you about the Ayodhya judgment, which you describe at great length in your book as being one of the most important judgments of India's recent judicial history and the hallmark of your tenure as Chief Justice. You also say that there was a divine intervention, a divine guidance, as it were. Why was it so important for you, Justice Gogoi, to deliver the Ayodhya judgment during your tenure as Chief Justice?
Rahul, I did not pull out Ayodhya from cold storage. I did not resurrect. It was a responsibility that my predecessor gave to me. Justice Deepak Mishra, on the eve of his retirement, fixed the date of hearing at 29th of October. That was soon after commencement of my tenure as the CJI. I had two options, to run or to fight. Justice Bobde says, I come from a family of warriors. I fought.
You also describe how you were tense, unable to sleep at night during the period when you and your brother judges were authoring the Ayodhya judgment. Describe that period, because you know that the whole country, within and without, everyone's looking at what you're doing and what's going on. And you say in your book that you felt that the reputation of the institution had been put at stake.
Rahul, I don't sleep well at night even today. I don't sleep at all. My mind keeps churning. Now, look, how do you sleep when you know that within 4 weeks of, or within 3 months of your of commencement of the hearing, on 6th of August, you would have to complete it. And within a particular time frame, you have to complete the discussions with your brother judges, write out the judgment, pronounce it. And what happens if you don't do it? The credibility of the institution and wastage of 4 months of judicial time of 5 judges. I constituted the bench. I took upon myself the burden of finishing it. The responsibility was mine. Do you expect me to sleep? I don't sleep. There's only one thing in my mind, the institutional reputation. I should not have taken the job if I were unable to do it. But having taken it, I must do it. That's the commitment.
The question that was asked of you, Justice Gogoi, was that while you took up on priority the Ayodhya judgment, several other cases, including at that time, all the petitions that were coming before the Supreme Court on the issue of Article 370, which had been revoked by the government in Jammu and Kashmir, the Supreme Court on your watch didn't seem to believe that matters of human rights in Jammu and Kashmir, on a matter as significant as the decision that the government had taken, was at least as important, if not more important, than the Ayodhya judgment.
I'm glad you asked me that question, which means that you have read my book. By the time the Kashmir cases came, the bench was halfway through the Ayodhya hearing. A month and a half had gone. So I did the most obvious thing on 30th of September. The Ayodhya hearing started on 6th of August. On 30th of September, on an office note, which is a part of the book, I assigned all the Kashmir cases to an alternate bench headed by the then available senior most judge. I can't do it. Why do I have to do it? There's another bench. The other judges will do it. I assigned it. I did not let it hibernate. I did not let the Kashmir cases hibernate. These were allotted to an alternate bench headed by the then senior most judge available on 30th of September with the Chief Justice's order that these cases will be listed for hearing on the 1st of October. One sec. The media says, and everybody says, the Chief Justice has no time for human rights case, Kashmir cases. What they don't say is that the Chief Justice assigned the Kashmir cases on that very day to be taken up by an alternate bench on the next day. Yes.
So while that explains your inability to take up the Kashmir cases because you were busy at that time with the Ayodhya judgment, it doesn't explain why the Supreme Court as an institution on your watch did not hear the cases more expeditiously.
Rahul, like Mr. Arun Puri's, Madam Kali Puri's organization. Yes, Mrs. Mehta, they are sitting next to you. They don't interfere in your day-to-day functioning, do they? They don't. And would you like if they do? I don't interfere. No Chief Justice interferes as to how judges should work from day to day. The judges are judges of the Supreme Court. You have to treat them with respect and dignity.
You also describe at great length how consensus emerged amongst the members of the bench about which direction the Ayodhya judgment would go in. And then how, after delivering the verdict, when everybody else is very tense, you and your brother judges went to the Taj Mansingh for a fine bottle of wine, and that I found very interesting because I thought everybody would be very tense, and I didn't imagine Justice Gogoi sitting and chilling and having a sip of wine.
The only regret is that I couldn't partake that wine because I'm not supposed to be. On medical advice, I'm off alcohol. My brothers had the wine, I paid for it. What a pity. Does it answer your question?
It does, to some extent.
Okay, glad. I'm glad it answers your question.
I also find very interesting, Justice Gogoi, that you've spent a lot of time in the book talking about the charges of sexual harassment that were leveled against you. Now, the perception in the world outside the Supreme Court is that because of the charges, the government of the day was able to ensure that the Chief Justice at that moment would not deliver unfavorable verdicts. How do you respond to this perception? You call it a lobby or a gang that's raising these questions, but how do you respond to this direct question?
What will I respond? Justice Bobde has already responded in anticipation. I belong to a warrior class. Don't you realize? Don't you know what it means? Mr. Rahul, in Chandigarh when I was the Chief Justice, I fought death. For 39 days I was in the ICU. The doctors were not hopeful that I would come out. I fought death. I fought the devil. After that, do you think anybody has the guts to tell me what to do? Do you think there are two interferences in my judicial career? I have mentioned it in my book. Read it. And if you have read it, tell the audience. Apart from these two, I have not had any interference. It has been an excellent journey.
So one is by Tarun Gogoi, and the other is by an officer who comes and asks him to go slow on the NRC. I'm just saying
not slow. And don't ask me to name that officer. You have named Tarun Gogoi. But don't ask me to name that officer. He's still in service. It will shake the government. Don't.
I want to stay with the...
I find the solicitor being a little apprehensive.
He's looking left and right for cover, wondering if he needs to duck, wondering if that's his
Maybe he's wondering where have I got into.
Stay back and listen to the whole conversation.
Yeah.
When the charge of sexual harassment was leveled against you, Justice Gogoi,
yes,
you chose to stay on and be on the bench. The order which was signed doesn't have your signature, but you were present when the matter of a case where the charge was against you was being heard. In hindsight, do you think that's a mistake?
I have mentioned in my book. In hindsight, perhaps I should not have been on the bench. But then, what do you do? What do you do, Rahul? Tell me. If your hard-earned reputation as one of India's up-and-coming anchor, with all the hard work that you put in, is sought to be destroyed overnight, am I to expect that you would act with 100% rationality? Do you think the Chief Justice of India is not human? 45 years of reputation that I built up in the bar and the bench, by one stroke of pen, it is sought to be destroyed. I am told, as I mentioned in the book, there's a 32 petition coming where prayers will be made asking you to step down until the inquiry is over. What do? You do a suo motu? And what is the order passed? What is the order? You must have read it. Does that order give me a clean sheet? No, please don't shake your head. Let us speak to the audience. Does that order give a clean sheet, Mr. Rahul?
No, you asked the other judge to inquire, but I'm on the principle of jurisprudence.
One minute.
Sitting in judgment on your own case.
No. Yeah, sitting in judgment over my own case. What was the order passed? Does this order give me a clean sheet? No. He's still not saying no. He's nodding his head.
Doesn't.
Okay, fine. Right. That's his way of saying no. Right. Now, what is that order passed by the bench? And I may tell the audience who will read the book, the order is there. The order says, we expect the press to be vigilant or to be responsible. That's all. And what is the media talking about? What is the social media talking about? What is the world talking about? Justice Gogoi presided over his own case and gave himself a clean sheet. It's there in the book.
But you have admitted that maybe sitting on that bench on that day was a mistake, and you regret that.
Of course. I have said, through hindsight, it might have been better if I had not been on the bench. And I have no difficulty in saying so. We all make mistakes. And if you make mistakes, fine. You made a mistake, admit it.
Let's come to the issue of the in-house proceeding, which you defend in the book, that when a charge is leveled against a sitting judge, you believe that the in-house proceeding, the results of which are not made public, is still the best way to go. People looking at it from the outside would say that this is a cozy club. They know each other, they protect each other's backs. They did not have an outsider, as would be the case in the Vishaka case or any other case where a sexual harassment charge is leveled, where you would have a committee, including outsiders who don't necessarily have to protect their own backs. Would you accept, Justice Gogoi, that if such a matter were to come again, maybe reviewing how that in-house procedure rules are determined might be a wise thing to do?
Rahul, we all talk about independence of the judiciary, and you believe in it. For the judiciary to be independent, the judges must be independent. Correct? The in-house procedure has been in vogue since 1999. It is a facet of the protection that is being given to the judges to maintain their independence. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry raising a complaint does not get investigated, not by outsiders. The judges themselves would do it. That is the wisdom of the full court of the Supreme Court taken in 1999. Right. Now, the in-house inquiry is not toothless. A prima facie finding we would require the judge to resign, and if he doesn't resign, the matter goes to the President and the Prime Minister for taking the impeachment route. So it's not a toothless procedure. Now, you raised a very pertinent point that brother judges are deciding the conduct of brother judges. Okay, fine. The alternative is the Internal Complaints Committee. You know who heads the Internal Complaints Committee in the Supreme Court? An additional registrar. An additional registrar will determine the fate of the Chief Justice of India, right? And the outsider will determine. I would have been very happy to have the additional registrar determine my fate, because he or she would have listened to what I wanted, right? But I put my neck, and then gave Justice Bobde the news, hang me. And who is Justice Bobde? He is the man who would have benefited the most by holding me guilty. He would have got an extra 7 months of tenure. What are you talking about, Rahul? What is the media talking about? What are people talking about? He could have hanged me, right? That is why I say fairness in judges.
After your tenure gets over, the lady who leveled these charges against you, Justice Gogoi, is reinstated. My question is this. If someone has the audacity of leveling what turn out to be unfair, unfounded charges against the then Chief Justice of India, why should penal action not be taken against that person, and why should that person be reinstated?
Very good. Excellent question. The lady didn't get reinstated. After my tenure. The lady got reinstated during my tenure. The lady addressed a letter to Justice Bobde. That's in the book, that letter. On humanitarian grounds, she wanted the job back. Justice Bobde, a disciplined soldier, sent the letter to me. I wrote back, I can't deal with this matter. Please decide according to your discretion. Justice Bobde is a compassionate man, and rightly so. Compassion is always is an integral part of administration. You throw out compassion and sympathy, the administration becomes lifeless. Justice Bobde ordered reinstatement. Justice Bobde reinstated during my tenure. I could not have dealt with the matter this way or that way.
You are convinced, from what I can gather from the book, that this seems to have been some kind of a conspiracy against you, possibly because some of the decisions that you took on the administrative side. Do you want to tell everyone who's sitting here, who do you think was trying to hang you, Justice Gogoi?
Why are you putting words in my mouth? Where did I say in my biography?
You refer to conspiracies.
I did not refer to conspiracy. The bench did. I did not refer to
Who do you think conspired against you, Justice Gogoi?
I wouldn't say nothing about conspiracy, because that is speculative. I don't speculate. I go by proof. I don't guess. I don't guess. You're putting words into my mouth. But that's your job.
I also feel what lawyers must have felt like when they're in Justice Gogoi's court, because he's questioning you or commenting on every comma and full stop. So the shaping of the question needs to be like a legal argument. You can't be amiss even by half an inch. I come now, sir, to that dramatic press conference.
Press conference, okay.
So in this big and dramatic press conference on the 12th of January, you seem to suggest in the book that you didn't fully know what you were walking into, that this was Justice Chalameshwar's idea. You said there was a discussion when you tried to argue before the Chief Justice about how the bench should be constituted or who should get the case, and you didn't like the way the Chief Justice at that time decided. You tried to argue, it didn't work out, and therefore a press conference was agreed upon. Why did you agree to be part of that press conference? What was going through your mind at that time, Justice Gogoi?
It's very easy to say that I didn't know what I walked into. It's very easy. Anybody can say it, but that's not enough. We addressed the press, and that was my idea, or at least what I understood. Maybe I understood it wrongly. I thought perhaps we are going to meet Mr. Mahapatra, Mr. X, Mr. Y, whom we see every day in court. Some judges, some media persons from the press lounge of the Supreme Court will come. But when I went to Justice Chalameshwar's house, I saw something different. This is what I have said. I didn't expect that. But that doesn't mean that I did not want to address the press. I wanted to, because I believed that that was the right thing to do at that time. The press conference was the outcome of an unsuccessful attempt to convince the then Chief Justice that he should act in a particular manner, and a manner which we, four judges, thought was reasonable. Namely, when you are allocating PILs, either the Chief Justice takes it, but if the Chief Justice cannot take it, it should go to bench number 2, 3, 4 in order of seniority. Chief Justice Mishra was not, for good reasons, bad reasons, he was not willing to do that. And it was happening a little frequently. So we went and voiced our concerns publicly. I hope that was the first, undoubtedly the first, and I hope it will be the last occasion when judges would address the press.
The headline at that time was "Democracy is in danger." How convinced were you then, and looking back now, that democracy was truly imperiled, which is what led you to doing that big press conference?
I was as less convinced or least convinced that democracy was in danger as I am least convinced about my acceptance of the Rajya Sabha nomination being quid pro quo to the Ayodhya judgment. I think this is nonsense, and democracy being in danger was a nonsense.
So the big question, the elephant in the room, is something that you mention a couple of times when you talk about interference from the executive. And you say that you can't say that there is no interference from the executive. You have to be able to deal with it, deal with the pressures, the tricky balance. Let me ask you a direct question, Justice Gogoi. How much interference is there?
Are all these questions that you are asking me indirect?
How much interference is there, Justice Gogoi, from the government of the day in the judicial functioning of our Supreme Court?
N-I-L, nil. I told you, who would dare and come and tell Ranjan Gogoi, do this and do that? Tushar, would you? Who would come? Who would come? The first thing I will do is, I'll display my warrior skills, number one. And number two, I will call All India Radio and tell them, here is a man, here this politician has come to me asking for this favor. They won't do it. There was no interference.
And your conscience is completely clear, because the perception in the world outside is that whether it's senior advocates will be appearing on behalf of the government, that they have a direct hotline to Supreme Court judges, and therefore at this time and this is a feeling not just voiced on the outside, but by many members of the bar as well, that the judiciary is no longer, sir, as it used to be.
When you're talking of hotline, there is actually a hotline. When I became the Chief Justice, they put up something strange-looking telephonic instrument. Right, Rahul? So I had not seen anywhere. So I asked him, what is this instrument? Said, sir, this is a hotline to the PM and the Home Minister and Law Minister. I threw away that hotline. I threw away that instrument. Justice Bobde may have also had it. He must have also thrown it. Right? There's no hotline. See, executive interference is capable of being made in 100 different ways. Right? It depends on the incumbent. I can only tell you my tenure. I did not meet the Prime Minister even once. I met him when he had come to the Supreme Court on 26th November, which also raised a hue and cry. Prime Minister is not entitled to come to the Supreme Court. Right. I received one call in a voice that sounded like Mr. Modi's. I refused to talk. I asked the IB director, was that a call from Mr. Modi? He said, he verified, and so, no, that was not a call, that was a fake call, somebody was impersonating. That's all.
You just said that somebody pretending to be the Prime Minister called you?
Somebody said, I am the Prime Minister. You can also call me up and say you are the Prime Minister. No difficulty.
So outside of this hoax and fake call, you weren't frequently in conversation with, say, the Law Minister, the Solicitor General?
Ravi Shankar Prasad is a good friend of mine. We had quite a few tea and samosas. Right? We met. Is it a sin? Is it a sacrilege to meet Ravi Shankar Prasad, the Law Minister? The ministers belong to a class that the class apart, right? The judges are the only persons that should mix with judges. I don't believe anything like that. But the fact is that I met not the Law Minister, I met my friend Ravi Shankar Prasad. I did not meet Modi Saab, I did not meet any other minister. Yes, the president, prior to my retirement, called us, the whole family, and gave us a private dinner. No quarrel with that? Okay. Yes.
You also talk about the controversy when the Prime Minister came to the Supreme Court. The timing was questioned because that was when the Rafale judgment was coming out, and there was an extended.
Hey, come on, this is the first. You have given me ideas. Rafale judgment. You are right. The first time it has struck my mind. Yes.
So, therefore,
right.
Questions were asked, and you've defended it, saying that the Prime Minister has the right to come and see the premises of the Supreme Court, and that you see nothing amiss. But those on the outside said, "Dal mein kuch kala hai."
Dal mein to kala hota hi hai na. Dal kala nahi hai to kya dal hai? Prime Minister came on 26th November. That is the Constitution Day, the Law Day, a holy day. The Chief Justices of the BIMTech countries were invited. There was a dinner. He came. He visited the Supreme Court. He visited the Chief Justice's chamber. I don't think anything wrong with it. The photographs of the judges who were with the Prime Minister in the Chief Justice's dinner is a part of the book. And some of the judges who were doing selfies with the Prime Minister are today activist judges who condemned the Prime Minister. They were present at that function. They took photographs. Have you seen those photographs? Do you recognize the activist judges?
One act of yours,
yes,
which raises many questions, is your decision to accept becoming a nominated member of the Rajya Sabha. For many on the outside, a lot of what you did in your tenure as Chief Justice came under cloud because of your decision to accept becoming a nominated member of the Rajya Sabha.
What would you have liked me to accept?
Why did you accept?
No, what would you have liked me to accept? A governorship? Or the chairman of human rights? If I had become the chairman of human rights, what would you have said? Would you have said the same thing? I would have been better off if I had taken chairman of human rights or the chairman of the law commission, because these are bodies that can only be manned by retired judges. And financially, I would have been better off. Right? Rahul, I am sick and tired of repeating that on day one, I wrote to the Secretary General of the Rajya Sabha and Secretary General of the Supreme Court that I won't take a penny from the Rajya Sabha. And 1.5 years, I have not taken a penny. I have not even taken the amount that is due to me for engaging office help. I am paying the office help from my own pocket.
When I asked you about the issue of the suggestion that you seem to be sitting in judgment on your own case, you said maybe in hindsight that was a mistake. If I were to ask you, Justice Gogoi, given the outcry that was generated by your decision to accept becoming a member of the Rajya Sabha, and given what's happening in the Rajya Sabha in terms of disruptions, do you look back and think of this maybe as being a mistake? You could have avoided it, been happier in Guwahati?
I anticipated this question. Even if I had second thoughts, the kind of noise that has been made has made me more determined. You can't cow me down with noises. You better evolve some other strategy if you have one. Shouting at Ranjan Gogoi will not do. I repeat, even if I had second thoughts about continuing, today I am very strong in my views. I will not bow down to unconstitutional, if not extra-constitutional noises.
And you'll take a second term if you got one?
If I get a second term, I will recommend Mr. Rahul Kanwal, like Sapan Dasgupta.
I want to draw you to the incident you refer in your book, where then Chief Minister Tarun Gogoi calls your mother to his residence in Guwahati, and your mum calls you to ask whether she should go or not, and you say if the Chief Minister has called you, you should go, and then asks for a judicial favor.
Tarun Gogoi is no more. Why should we talk about? I have mentioned it in a book. It was very unfortunate. I was doing a case where the government had high stakes. He requested my mother to come and meet him. The poor lady, she's no more. She came all the way from Dibrugarh, spending her pension, taking a flight. And the Chief Minister asked her to speak to me that the judgment in that case should go in favor of the government. She walked out, and she didn't even mention to me. She mentioned it to me after the judgment was delivered. These are things that happen. These are things that happen. But this happens once in a blue moon. Yes.
The other instance you cite is of the NRC, which is clearly very dear to your heart. You spend a lot of your time talking about the need for an NRC, the misconceptions around it, how it's been politicized. And then you say a senior official in the current government called you asking you to go slow. Given the fact that the government wants to push the NRC, I wonder why would a senior official ask the judge to go slow?
Who told you that the government wants to go ahead with the NRC? Where from you have got this idea?
In political rallies in Assam and Bengal, that's what they say. Once those rallies end, it changes. But during the political heat and dust in Bengal...
You have missed out the most vital line in my book. The vital line is, what was right was not said, and what was said was not right. What was correct was not said, and what was not correct was said, both by the central government and by the state government. This is my view expressed in the NRC case, in the NRC chapter. Nobody wanted an NRC. But the NRC is a constitutional obligation. Therefore, the Supreme Court of India took it.
So if I could step outside of syllabus just for a moment to ask you about the demand for the revocation of AFSPA. On the back of what's happened in Nagaland, a big demand being made as former Chief Justice, as a member of the Rajya Sabha, do you believe the current government needs to reconsider the Armed Forces Special Power Act?
The demand for the repeal of the Armed Forces Special Power Act has been going on for the last 40 years. The draconian kind of powers are given to the military and the paramilitary force, which have led to avoidable situations. The situation in the incident in Nagaland that happened, the very ugly incident, unfortunate incident, that was a mistake. That was an accident. But that accident was facilitated by the Act. Accidents are unfortunate. Stringent laws may also be required. The idea is not to take a hasty decision, but to try and strike out a balance. In what way the balance would be struck is really for the executive to work out. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act, at times you would feel the requirement for it. At times, in cases of accidents and excesses, you would feel the need for repeal of it. The truth lies both ways.
As I come to the last part of this conversation, I want to spend the time that we have left talking about the functioning of the Collegium, the appointment of Supreme Court judges, and as an outsider, I'd like to know from you, Justice Gogoi, how satisfied are you with the manner in which judges are appointed at this moment? Are you convinced that truly the best and the brightest who can do the greatest service to India's judiciary have an opportunity to sit in the highest court of the land? And if not, what would be your recommendation to try and fix it?
That's the last question, but the most difficult one. Very difficult. I can tell you of my experience in the Collegium as the Chief Justice of India. I had no difficulty. I had no difficulty. I have mentioned in my book, apart from 14 Supreme Court judges, my Collegium appointed 28 Chief Justices, 127 High Court judges. And when on the day I retired, 60 names of High Court judges were pending. A consensus was built up over prolonged discussion. And as luck would have it, we did manage to have a consensus on every name. Any system is bound to have its plus points, minus points. The Collegium system also has its plus points, minus points. Who knows the prospective judges better than the judges? But then dominance of the judges with little or no say of the executive. Everything has to be fine balanced. I remember the famous words of Justice of Ambedkar. A good constitution in the hands of bad people becomes a bad constitution. A bad constitution in the hands of good people becomes a good constitution. This all depends on the people working under the constitution. But I will tell you one thing. When we are talking of the Collegium system, I would like to mention my High Court, the Guwahati High Court. My High Court is the only High Court in the country which is functioning with full strength for the last 1.5 years. It's the only High Court functioning with full strength. Why? The other High Courts are functioning with half the strength. Why? Because as a Supreme Court judge, I made it clear to the Chief Justices of my parent High Court that they should not come to me to get prior approval of names. You do your duty, send your names, I will do my duty. And I believe Justice Rishikesh Roy, who now represents the Guwahati High Court and who is present today, is doing the same thing. So the Guwahati High Court is a model High Court so far as the success of the Collegium system is concerned.
So what struck me as odd when I was reading about the multiple cases of transfers that you've mentioned, I'm not getting into each of those because that would require a whole separate conversation. You write about Intelligence Bureau Director's reports containing adverse remarks about a particular judge and how that made the Collegium have to reconsider its view. What struck me as odd as an outsider, Justice Gogoi, was that if there is an IB director's unsigned report which contains adverse remarks about a judge who's currently in the High Court and the judges are convinced that there is some merit to what is being said, instead of taking action against that judge, in multiple places the judge gets transferred to another court. So if the judges currently serving in the Supreme Court know that a particular judge in a particular high court has charges which you now believe are prima facie correct, why should that judge continue to serve and merely get transferred to another court, Justice Gogoi?
Yes, you have a very valid point there. But how do you get rid of a judge? The process is political. The judges have no say in matter of removal of judges. It's the Rajya Sabha or the Lok Sabha which decides it.
Towards the end of the book, you say that there are many secrets that you haven't spoken of yet, and you may think about them or you thought about them and you left them. And I kept wondering, what secrets have you left out of this book, Justice Gogoi? Can you give us some of those?
If I give out the secrets that I have left out, then where is the suspense?
So you have Justice for the Judge Part 2 lined up.
Maybe a Part 3 if required. Or Justice for the Rajya Sabha member, Part 1. We don't know. Life is very uncertain, Rahul. Life is very uncertain. Life is, you can't answer life with logic.
Are you enjoying your time in the Rajya Sabha? Because unlike when you're presiding over a Supreme Court bench as Chief Justice, where you can order everyone to sit down and they better listen to you, here it's not quite like that. Do you feel helpless at times?
I don't know whether I'm enjoying the Rajya Sabha tenure, but I'm certainly enjoying the conversation with you. It has been excellent. And I wish we could have more of this, Rahul.
It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege. I can go on for the rest of the evening. There is so much in that book. But I don't want to give it all away. Then everybody will say, we've already heard the conversation. We know what the judge thinks of it. We don't need to read the book. So we'll leave it over here. You've been candid. You've been outrightly spoken. You've got those who love you. You've got those who continue to criticize you. And you keep referring again and again to a cabal or a lobby. Who is this lobby? Who is in that lobby and that cabal that is the shadow that looms through your book?
Maybe that will come in Part 2.
He's also been learning some tricks of marketing books from Shah Rukh Khan and some of the others. Justice Ranjan Gogoi, it's been an absolute pleasure and a delight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best. Thank you, sir.